Everybody, welcome back to the quest for the bestest from Backlog Banter. My name is Timo. I'm joined by Tucker, Tanner, and Aberman. Today we are doing the 8th and final installment of the Best Picture nominees of 2021. We're talking about Nomadland, directed by Chloe Zhao, starring Frances McDormand, David Strathairn. Those are the actors in the movie. There's more characters, but they're not actors. So we'll get into it. But last week we talked about Promising Young Woman, and we had a quite long discussion. We had a lot of different points thrown around, and it ended up at the number... Wait, I'm so wrong, aren't I?
That wasn't the one.
Completely incorrect. We did trial last week.
Trial last week.
Okay.
Let's just continue. Let's go. We did trial the Chicago 7.
No, I don't want to continue. I don't want to continue. I'll do it again. I'm fine.
No big.
Third time's the charm.
Yeah.
Remember the Lego Batman movie when he's throwing all the batarangs at the button? He's like, first try. That's a fun
movie. Sucks.
That's such a good movie.
It's decent.
Don't be slamming around your water bottle while I'm trying.
You're a fucking enlightened centrist, and I hate you.
I always fall on somewhere on the spectrum between Tucker and Abram on basically everything.
Yeah, you definitely are on the spectrum.
Everyone is. It's the spectrum.
Okay.
All right.
Tanner just canceled autism.
It's done. All right. I'm not gonna. We're recording.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the quest for the bestest from Backlog Banner. We're talking about the best pictures from 2021, the nominees that is, and today is our 8th and final installment before the big ceremony. And so of course, we're talking about what is the front runner, sort of, Nomadland, directed by Chloe Zhao, starring Frances McDormand, David Strathairn, and a bunch of non-actors. And we're going to talk about this movie. I think it's a very interesting movie. And I really have no idea what the rest of the guys think. So, it'll be a good time. But before that, we've got to head back into the past. Last time we talked about Trial of Chicago 7, Aaron Sorkin movie. And while we had some gripes, we had some issues, we thought it was overall, kind of middling. I think that's how we really described it. And so it ended up in the middle of the list at number 4 out of 7. And we'll see if that's in the top half or the bottom half after today. But the list as it stands going into the final episode: Sound of Metal at number 1, Judas and the Black Messiah at number 2, The Father at 3, Trial of the Chicago 7 at 4, Promising Young Woman at 5, Minari at 6, and Mank in last at 7th. So now chores are done. We get to have our fun. What say ye about Nomadland?
First of all, I can't believe that you mispronounced King David Strathairn's name. I can't believe you did that, Timo.
Strathairn?
Yeah, Strathairn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a clarifying question quickly?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because Timo said something very interesting. What do you mean that only 2 of the people were actors?
Oh, you didn't know
this is very interesting.
Timo or Abram is completely unaware of Nomadland.
I watched this movie basically completely blind.
Oh, wow.
For the record, yes.
Wow.
Okay. Well, we can just answer that right away. The movie's based off of a book. So the movie is about Frances McDormand plays Fern. She's a nomad traveling around in her van after the economic recession and after her father's death and after her town is dissolved. Her husband's death. Yep. Sorry. And after her town gets, everyone moves away from there and everything leaves. So she just travels around just trying to make a living one way or another in the American West. Now, it's based on a book. And the characters that are not recognizable as actors, Bob Wells, Linda May, Swanky, all those characters are played...
Everyone except Fern and Dave.
Yeah, are all played by themselves. Those are the real people that the real of the book is about, and that essentially tell their story in the movie as nonfiction.
Yeah. It's an interesting blend of fiction and nonfiction, which I think is part of the reason this movie is receiving a lot of critical acclaim, is because it is so naturally integrated, the fictional story of Frances McDormand's character woven in between just essentially vignettes from all these people's lives describing how they became part of the nomadic lifestyle, and they're telling their actual life stories. But you really can't tell. As Abram said, he watched this blind, and he had no way of knowing that. And honestly, I don't even remember if I knew that going into it.
I think I learned
might
about
have
it
been-
after I saw it the
Yeah.
first time. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
something like that.
I think we had the discussion about that when we saw the credits rolling at the end. He's like, "Oh,
exactly.
that person played themselves, and that person played themselves," and
just on down the
Yeah.
list. But yeah, that's kind of the big conceit of this movie. So
Yeah.
it might, partially reframe
Yeah.
how you see some of the aspects of the film, but I mean, it's certainly very interesting.
Mhm.
But I want to hear what you think, Abram.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to hear what you thought about it.
Yeah, so I liked it. I think this is a hauntingly intimate story that is told in a very, very quiet way, and to use a favorite BLB term.
Oh, he's going to steal it from me. No, I really wanted to say it today.
But and I think that's actually just bolstered by what you guys just told me. Like I said, I went into the film basically completely blind. Knew it was highly praised, knew it was nominated, of course, but never seen any trailers, no production history. So I think it's a very disarming experience seeing just how raw the portrayals of these people are, and these long and very quiet sequences of Frances McDormand just doing things and existing in nature and all of these shots. But I think the film for me is a little bit aimless, which is partially by design, but led to me kind of disconnecting from it. So this is one where I really see the strong artistic vision and felt it as I was watching it, but didn't leave much of an impact. And kind of as we're discussing, I want to try to unpack why that was for me, because I think this is, on the whole, a very expertly assembled film.
I think I'm in basically the exact same position. This was my second time seeing it. We saw it on the big screen the first time, which I think is probably how this movie should be seen, with the big vistas and the nature shots, all of that stuff really working well on a big screen. But I think this is an incredibly made movie. I think it obviously, as Abram said, has an artistic vision. I'm very impressed by Chloe Zhao's directing. But it's a movie where I recognize all the strengths, but just don't feel anything personally from it. I have it written down in my notes. It just isn't what I look for in a movie. I mean, it doesn't have the things that I go into watching a film for. So it just lacks any innate qualities that I connect to. So while I have almost entirely positive notes on my page, it still is going to drop a little bit in my personal rankings and personal enjoyment, because I don't know how much I felt from it. Being an avid film goer, this wasn't exactly what I was looking for.
Tanner, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this film is extremely personal, and it feels very real for obvious reasons. The cinematography is absolutely stunning. I love those, those big open, the Western frontier shots. I think Chloe Zhao makes great use of the sunrise and sunset in her cinematography. Really bathes those shots in a very like beautiful golden and purpley light. I think a lot of the performances, even though they aren't professional actors, outside of Frances McDormand and David Strathairn, the performances from people, especially Bob, are very moving. I think they give like these great monologues, and they feel very personal because they are very personal. And Chloe Zhao was able to capture that on camera from these people who aren't actors, who might have otherwise been, a bit stilted, feeling a bit awkward about portraying themselves on film. But yeah, I think she does. It really goes into that camp of, she blurs the lines between just being a narrative film and a documentary, and I think it pays off in spades.
Yeah, I love almost everything about this movie. I really like it. It's my front runner, to show my hand right off the bat here. It's also what I think the Academy is going to pick. I think there's a lot of reasons why this is the Best Picture winner of this year. I think as a work of art, as an artistic achievement, this blurring the lines, and it's so smooth and it's so convincing. Chloe Zhao deserves so much praise for getting these performances from these non-actors that are so moving and so emotional. And I've directed friends and whatever, and sometimes it's like really hard. People just don't know what to do, and so for her to like be able to come out and just find those nuggets, those like elements, and it's so real, it's so subtle. The film exudes subtleism. I'm gonna throw it in there because I wanted to say that, but Abram swiped it out from under me. And I think I agree, Tanner. The cinematography is just beautiful, and I like the pacing, and I like what what it has to say, and it's like, you know, aimless feel to it. I think the pacing is very satisfying to me as it fits with the rest of the film. It's the right thing. It was the right choice for this movie to have it feel as it does.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that the pacing and editing is something where I personally don't connect to it a lot. I'm someone who likes fast editing in my movies. I like things that are very clearly tied together, and of course, this does have that aimless feel, which is obviously intentional. But I think that's part of the reason it doesn't connect to me is because this is a very jumpy movie in terms of time jumps, in terms of total jumps, in terms of like what's going on screen. A scene will just end and we'll be somewhere else, different time. Have traveled across the country, and it does for me make it hard to keep track of what's going on. And I realize that that's kind of the point. It doesn't really matter when things happen in your life. It's all tied together. There's a deeper metaphorical theme going on behind why the pacing and editing is done this way. But I did find myself a little bit confused throughout. Is like, okay, well, if this is just a snippet from someone's life with very little connection to what's going on around it, why should I care too much? Why should I connect to it a lot? And I think that's part of the reason it disconnected from me, even though it's obviously intentional. Maybe it just doesn't hit.
On my second watch, I noticed a lot of the vignettes and whatnot, especially the vignettes that happen of Fern's life, but also who what the other people say in the more documentary sections really do feel like they provide an interesting through line about Fern's character. I think there's a lot to think about in terms of character in this film that is so layered. It's so just subtle. We're gonna keep saying it this whole time. That like the second time I watched it, I really was starting to unpack and figure out what was going on, and it made it more enjoyable for me.
I'm somewhere between you two because personally, I don't find Fern to be an especially compelling character. By contrast, I think that this is an incredibly compelling depiction of America's dispossessed people and this really bizarre, and if you spend any time in a rural area or a lower income area, this sense that this film takes place, as you see in the poster, when Avengers Endgame is coming out. But
No.
she's
Avengers.
Regular Avengers.
2012.
regular Avengers?
Yeah.
Okay, it's the same thing. It's a modern day depiction where you don't feel that way. It feels like these people are living
Sure, yeah.
decades into the past, and it's this really, I think, honest depiction of how there is a clear cultural and class divide in the country, and I think that the film's ability to capture that outweighs the fact that I didn't really care to follow Fern in particular. I was more interested in where she went and the people she met and what they said, opposed to what she said herself.
I feel like for my TV show, I did a review of this, and I noted in the script for that Fern is a very good sounding board for these characters. Frances McDormand is a great performer in her ability to just listen. She sits there and she listens and lets these other people's experience wash over her. And I hope that that would have been a great help on set just to get those takes in the first place, to have the helpful glance of Frances McDormand sitting across from you.
Yeah, and I think that even if I didn't connect to Fern, as Abram's saying, I'm kind of on the same page with him. She's interesting, but it's more of the situation that she's in that's interesting rather than her herself. But I do think that the way that she plays off the other characters not only allows them, or the people, allows them to explain parts of their life in a really real way. But also, it's interesting to see her personality be revealed so slowly throughout the course of the film. The things that she does and in effect, her personality, who she is as a person, are not very clear until you get her talking to other people. She's a very quiet and reserved and sort of internalized person, but through the different interactions with different personalities, different aspects of her personality start to emerge. And by the end of the film, you have a lot better picture of who she is as a person in a way that I think is pretty unique for like revealing, the backstory, the character, the personality of a character. Because you'll get a lot of films that put a character right out there and you know exactly what they're like, and you get to see them bouncing off other people. And this is very unique in the way that it reveals her personality throughout the course of the whole thing. So it takes a while to get into, but I think there's certainly an interesting character there.
Extrapolating from what Tucker just said there, I'm trying to find words here a second. A character moment that I found, I discovered on my rewatch of it for this was when Fern is on that nature sort of tour out in the Badlands, which Dave is leading, and they go out and it's about evening time, and she ventures off from the rest of the group and like goes to that sort of like empty basin that has some like weird rock formations in it, and she's just kind of wandering aimlessly around in there. And when I first watched the movie, I didn't really give much thought to it. But on my second watch, and this could be me just pulling too much out of this, but let me know what you guys think. I think she was looking for, the something neat that Swanky was talking about when she was like, when Swanky was talking to Fern about like, I've seen some really neat things in my life, and that's why I think I'm ready to die. I think that Fern was looking for those very same, neat things that she can latch onto and think like, this is why I'm out here. I'm nomading and I'm traveling across country and not being rooted down anywhere. I sort of extrapolated that character moment from that scene. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Am I off base here?
I think that scene is I think you're right, because it's multifaceted in that it talks about, also there's this sort of frustrated love plot that goes on between Dave and Fern that I think as like a frustrated and a unsatisfying in they don't work out. It's very motivated. It really works, especially the second time around seeing it and knowing that she is not over the death of her husband, and she won't take off that ring. She won't, she's spending her whole life remembering, is one of the last lines of the film, and that like really informs how she's very reserved, more than usual, around Dave, and cold at times, and there's tension when they're around because you can see his actions, trying to woo her or whatever, but it never fully comes around. And I think that's a good move for the film, and I think it really works with her character. And on a second watch, it's to see those two interactions, knowing everything already, was more enjoyable than even the first. I got more out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what you guys think the film is about thematically, because I feel like the film is about 6 different things, which is
give a list.
Not specifically 6, but it's in it. My point is that the film is touches on a lot. It touches on this sort of work culture. It touches on personal identity. It touches on the love and the loss that we were talking about. And I think part of the reason it felt aimless for me is I think some of the searching, the both physical and metaphorical works, but I think on a more thematic level, I don't know if I left the film feeling, okay, this is what Nomadland is trying to tell me, and this is what I'm supposed to leave with. I feel like here's a land. I was shown a very beautiful and important landscape with people that do not get their voices heard. But what am I supposed to really hear? Is it about living my life to the fullest? Is it about getting outside of capitalist work culture? Like, what is the film trying to tell me? Or is it trying to tell me all of it?
I think that actually Tanner's reading of the film and that scene in specific about Fern searching for those neat things to sort of satisfy her craving for adventure, for living life to the fullest. I think that ties into the theme which I took out of it, which is mostly mortality and how everyone deals with coming to the end of their life or what they expect to do with their life. And that, that kind of ties into the work culture, because work is such a big aspect of what we do in this capitalist society. And that ends up being most of our life. And if we spend our time doing something we're not enjoying, then, what's the point? So moving away from that and finding what makes you happy and exploring and seeing what's neat, that leads to being comfortable with your own mortality. Like, was it Swanky talking about how she had a book that was like planning to end her life because she, I think she had brain cancer at that point. But how it all ties together with mortality and exploration and self-identity. I think it's all funneling down to a core, but it's a bunch of themes funneling to one point, and maybe it's a little bit hard to pinpoint which one of those themes comes out above. For me, it's mortality, but I think it's interesting that the film can be read in so many different ways, and I think they're all equally as valid. I don't necessarily think that focus is what this film is going for, because as we said, it's a little bit aimless. It's about people who are essentially aimless, who don't have a home, who wander for the search of their life. So maybe there's a triple layer of deep analysis that you can do here that's kind of fun.
I just brewed up a great, potentially nonsensical metaphor for this film, if I may.
For
if
audio
I may share.
listeners, he developed a big grin on his face as I was finishing up my tirade there.
The themes of this film, are you ready for this?
Shit.
I am really yes.
Are like a Plinko board. Does everyone know what a Plinko board is?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, because you can start out at any point at the top, and it depends what points you hit on it, what things you grab onto in the character dialogue, or what themes you can extrapolate from the cinematography or what have you. But you end up at basically this base level where you can be in 5 or 6 different compartments, but they're all at this base level thematic reading of the film.
Well, that actually works better than I thought it would.
Thank you. Vindication, everyone. I thought I was gonna get torn to shreds about that.
I mean, basically, what you explained was a visual metaphor of what I was trying to say. With,
exactly.
One core thing, but there's a bunch of things you can bounce off of on your way to the bottom.
Yes.
Ooh.
I think that Abram, you talked about the film really painting a picture of the West and of America, and I think that is a lot of what I get away from it is about this like real like visual landscape, like a visual poetry almost, to be really really highfalutin. That it talks about all these different things, about getting old and about working yourself to death, and then not wanting to work and trying to just live your life to find the moments. And I think that using these dispossessed people, especially after the economic crash in 2008, really shows off a lot about America and about how we think and about like how it looks. I think the film is a lot about just what you see. And so much of the film is very beautiful, and so much of it is very beautiful in a not traditional way. These, snowed wastelands, the empty factory, the empty mine is not beautiful, but it's shot very beautifully and shows off. And this part of America, this corridor, in the West, Colorado, Nevada, Utah, the Dakotas, is not a super traveled area. It's not super touristy. It's much more, rural, and it's often much poorer. And so to show off that element too, I think is very important to this film. And thinking about it as a Chloe Zhao film, a lot of her other films deal with this idea of the American West, the neo-American West, and what that's like. So that's like part of where she's coming from. Like the 2017's The Rider is also takes place in Montana, I think.
Speaking of The Rider and this sort of like the modern American West, I wanted to shout out a personal favorite character of mine, and that is Derek the cowboy. Like the wandering, he's got the lasso and the big rimmed hat. And I just love that guy because he's like, I was watching this with Anna. This is the first time that she was watching this, and she's like, people still dress like that, and the inclusion of that character, who is a real guy again, is just so interesting to me because he's like, I had no idea when I first watched this. Like, it's so interesting that somebody like that, he's dressed as a cowboy and he just wanders around the American West. And like, that guy is so interesting. And he has a girlfriend back in Wisconsin, and he's trying to figure out how to write the words to explain how much he loves her. And he's just aimless, like a lot of the film is, and like a lot of the characters in the film are. But I just grabbed onto him for some reason, and probably mostly because of that reason, that Chloe Zhao tackles these ideas of the American West in the modern era, and how this guy's like a weird holdover from the cowboy era, but he's just living his life. He's living his best life out there.
Yeah. I think this film is actually more universal than that, which is why I personally connected to it to an extent, because at least up in Maine, if you go up north enough, you find these paper mill towns that are completely ghosted now by that manufacturing leaving the country, and you look at sort of the barren remains of that very economically vibrant center, like because my grandpa was involved in that, so we still go up there very infrequently to a farm or like a lake house they rent up there. And so it was so interesting for me to see sort of this universal condition about these almost like scars left behind by the changing face of the country and sort of what's left behind and what's gone. So having not seen her previous films, I took this as a more universal film, and I think it's just interesting beyond my personal feelings about how the film accomplishes what it does. Seeing these people and stories that are not told, it be told in such a genuine way, and being able to see something from your own life or from your family's life or your community's life represented here, I think is really important and empowering in a way that you don't typically get from films like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually do think that, and I was thinking about this a little bit earlier when Timo was bringing up that this is the front runner by all intents and purposes for winning Best Picture, and how coming out of this film and saying, yeah, that was a really good movie, but does it feel like anything we would have expected to be a front runner for the Best Picture of the year? Maybe from a more art house perspective, but from us having seen 30 plus or whatever Best Picture winners, no, this feels nothing like any of those. And it's very surprising and very fresh that it is leading that. And it would be really interesting to see this one because it would be such a spin on what the Best Picture means. Mm-hmm. But I also think it's fresh for the reason of it being a interesting perspective on modern lens. We're watching it in 2020, but it's set in 2012. And the idea of, honestly, seeing Amazon represented in a film as a place that people work, like that's just something that doesn't even occur to me to put in a movie because it's like, oh, that's too new. Like it's just something that happens every day. But it is interesting to see this modern aspect of that's just a background of our lives be presented in more mainstream film. Mainstream because it's becoming more popular because it's nominated for Oscars. But just seeing that in general, it was really fresh to see a modern perspective from an alternate perspective.
Yeah, I think something that is very interesting to think about Chloe Zhao is that she was born in Beijing, and so her background is not American, and so I think she brings a very interesting, almost outsider perspective, like the way to like show things how they are without the tint of having lived in them for your entire life. I think she's very much able to do that in this film, and I know that she's nominated for Best Director. And I'm just going to lay it out there. I think she's so deserving of it for the win. Even if the film doesn't win, I think the accomplishments with the non-actors and with the story here, they really make me see no other option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If no one else has, does anyone else have a raging thing? Because I just kind of have a meme thing I want to bring up. But
okay.
Does anyone else want to be sincere about this movie?
Yes, I have a question. And I don't have an answer to this. Does this movie to you feel pretentious?
No, I would say no.
Yeah, I'd say no.
I think Abram, you said something that really solidifies my answer in that, is that I think it does show these people with such genuine care and interest in what they actually have to say. What they're saying feels so genuine. With like Linda May's towards the beginning of the film, her talking about her low point and her having like $500 some for Social Security benefits, and Bob talking about not only his mission but his personal story about losing his son. Which I can only presume he lost his son due to the 2008 financial crisis. It all feels so genuine and honest in their portrayal that I don't think it feels pretentious.
And I think that has to do with the fact that they're not actors. That these are people that she's just essentially capturing the life from. And it's interesting to see her paint a fictional story from a book intertwined with these people's lives. And I haven't read the book and I don't know anything about these people's lives. So I don't know how much of their stories are particularly written for this script, or are they based off themselves in the book? I don't know what the book is even really about, but that would feel pretentious if it was these people portrayed by actors that were written for the idea of, okay, we're going to present these people who don't have their voices heard. But these are the people who don't have their voices heard. They're not rich people who have been in Hollywood for 20 years acting as people who don't have their voices heard. Of course, Frances McDormand notwithstanding, which, maybe there's a little bit weird with that, with her playing this kind of character. But I think that's why it doesn't feel pretentious, is these people are actually telling their stories. So there's not a Hollywood veneer on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point, that it doesn't have the Hollywood veneer. I was just going to say that I don't really view documentaries as a very pretentious genre of film, and this film feels like a documentary a lot. There are shots, I especially think of the last sequence with Bob where he's talking, and the way it's framed and the way he talks and the camera just holds on him as he speaks for, minutes upon minutes, just feels something straight out of, like a world-class documentary that will win, one of the ones that's going to win Best Documentary this year. It feels like something like that. And that in itself, that authenticity and that, like, I guess respect for the truth that comes with the documentary makes this film, which I'm going to say is fiction, makes it feel very genuine and very down to earth. It's a very down to earth film.
Yeah. Another point that I just thought of is that it does feel sad and melancholy, but it doesn't feel like she wants you to really, like, we're showing you this to just punch you in the heart. We want you to pity these people so much. It doesn't feel like that, because these people have had, horrible experiences in their past life, but they're just living their, like I said about Derek, they're just living their lives now. They're living their best life. They're they're seeing neat things. They're traveling the country, and this is what they love doing. They've freed themselves from the yoke of what did Bob say? The yoke of work or
Society.
something. Yeah, sure. But I think it also shows this as sort of a noble pursuit as well, and it doesn't feel like a pity party for these people.
Yeah, there's the whole sequence with the family of Fern of Fern and the family of Dave, where it's very clear that this is not something that she's forced into. It's something that she accepts and wants to be. She wants to be the nomad, and that's who she is. And it's not a judgment on her, and it's just who Fern is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I described the film in my opening remarks as feeling intimate, and I agree with this documentarian feel. I think any of these close-ups, I really love the scene early on in the film around the campfire where they're all just sharing their stories. I think these moments do feel very intimate and very genuine. I'm grappling with, and I can't decide exactly where I land on it, whether Frances McDormand and Fern and these more subtle long takes, if that feels pretentious to me. I don't know how I feel about the intersection between Fern and these other people, because I almost would have just wanted Nomadland the documentary. I do think for me there is this element. I do think that there is an element of the Hollywood veneer in these sweeping nature shots and these long scenes of Fern doing things. And I don't know if for me that takes away from the how genuine these real people feel. I feel like there is a sort of mediation in the blend of fiction and nonfiction that for me dulls a little bit what is a very impactful film. And I don't think it's enough for me to be anywhere short of liking Nomadland, but I wonder if I would have liked it more and felt that it was completely honest had it just been a documentary.
I've got to be honest. You've unlocked something in my brain here. Is that through talking about this film, the last 30 plus minutes, whatever we've talked about, the fictional aspects of it are not the important aspects of this film. It's showing the life that these people lead. It's the idea that we're seeing something that is actually happening in the background of our culture. It's the idea of seeing these shots of areas that aren't traditionally presented in a beautiful way. But Fern's story, at least in my mind, and I think in the way we're analyzing the film, is not the centerpiece of it. And I do think that it would have still been equally as compelling and interesting if it was just a documentary. You still would get those sweeping vista shots and stuff because that we want to show where these people are going. That those places actually exist. It's not like they came up with those, not sets. And so much of the shots and the conversations are just these people doing these monologues, which you could also get in a documentary. And while Fern is an interesting character in the way that she represents one of these people from this time period in this situation, she's honestly not the core of the movie, and I think that's pretty interesting that we can analyze this narrative featured highly acclaimed film, and the fictional part of it is not what's important, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I'm not sure I entirely agree with you there. That I think the fictional story brings out, like we've been talking about all these different thematic elements. It brings out more of those elements. We hear the characters talking. It allows Fern to be the foil for the characters that the fiction, the real life characters that talk. Whereas Fern does. Fern is an active character in the film, and we see her working at Amazon. We see her working at Wall Drug. We see her making decisions about going to, sleep in her camper, sleep in her van instead of in the house when, when they're at Dave's family. And so, and there's all the elements of her backstory, and that she, overcoming loss and grief. I think it adds to the film and adds these other thematic elements in a meaningful way. Whereas in a documentary, I think it would be much more focused on like the reality of the situation. Whereas, getting food, getting electricity is not like super important to this story because it's fiction.
Yeah. Meme time, Tanner?
Yes, I think it is. And let's we've been very serious this entire review, but there's something even more serious and even more important that I need to bring up. And that is, of course, the appearance, maybe the first time ever put to screen, of the most magical, the
spit it out, Jesus Christ.
Thing. What is it called? The most magical place on Earth, and that is not Disneyland or Disney World. It's Wall Drug. Okay, it's Wall Drug in South Dakota. What a beautiful realm you're transported into when you go to Wall Drug. I've been frozen. But if you could see the grin on my face when talking about Wall Drug, boys, Abram, you've probably never been there. I know Tucker hasn't been there. Timo,
I've never been to Wall Drug.
You haven't been to Wall Drug? Listen,
where is it?
What a terrible name for a place.
Where is it in South Dakota?
It's in western South Dakota.
Well, I've only been in eastern South Dakota
because it's near the Badlands.
Oh yeah.
Well, and the reason it's called Wall Drug, and this, hang on a second. Now, this serves the sort of crux of the film, is that it is this holdover that's become a tourist attraction. It's this holdover from the frontier, the pioneer era. It was basically an old-timey saloon, pharmacy, pick up your goods and go kind of place. And now it's become the world's greatest tourist attraction. If you were ever wondering how to get to Wall Drug, fear not, ladies and gentlemen, because the roads in the Midwest will remind you roughly every 20 to 40 miles how far it is to Wall Drug. Okay, there are billboards posted everywhere. It's like, hey, you're only 237 miles away from Wall Drug, and let me tell you, did anyone else feel wrapped up and enraptured in the mood surrounding Wall Drug in this movie? Because I did.
Jesus Christ.
You got to see some alligators. You got to see the planet Jupiter. You got to see a modeled version of Mount Rushmore. And boy, howdy, I think audiences would have left the theater much like they did with the arrival of a train at a station if they put to screen the famed penny smushing machines, in which you put in a penny and then you crank it and it comes out elongated with a pattern printed onto it.
Abram is wiping his eyes. He's dying so hard right now.
Oh boy. That's exactly what this review needed.
Thank you.
You're exactly right. Well, that was very interesting. I've received some vote from Abram.
I wanted to take a moment to rival Timo's Mank sound review with my own Nomadland Wall Drug rant.
The Wall Drug rant. Everyone loves it.
There we go. Okay. There's something else I was. Something this movie also nails is the just weird non sequitur random deep encounters old people will find themselves just in. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever interacted with an old person, especially one
From time to time.
especially one that you'll just meet on the street. They will just start talking to you. Like that one lady who talks to Fern about like, oh, your ring, and it's a symbol of your everlasting marriage with your husband, and they call you nomads. That's just what old people are like. They're weird like that.
This film is a very accurate depiction of old people.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I've got the number. Are you ready for it? It's a very simple number. It's 2 3/4.
Oh,
wow!
Like platform in Harry Potter.
No. So that
3/4.
That puts it at number 3. Now,
Okay.
the vote breakdown goes as such. I put it at number 1, Tanner put it at number 2, Abram put it at number 3, and Tucker put it at number 5.
Yep.
So, that's very interesting. I have to say I'm a little disappointed.
Well,
I mean, I'm fine with number 3, quite honestly. I was honestly debating whether to put it at number 2 or 3, but after the discussion, I realized that some people weren't as high on it as I was, so I played some strategy, played some tactics, and decided to go with number 2, which was a possibility in my mind from the beginning. So,
see, I kind of did the opposite. Is that I started, and I have the note on the back of my page. This is what I wrote right at the beginning. I was going to put it at number 7th place. Just because when I come out of this movie and I've watched it and I've seen it twice, I think, this is a really good movie, but do I care that much? Is it anything what I'm looking for out of a movie? Do I feel like it has the character or the pacing or the content that I enjoy seeing a film? Not particularly. While I'm able to talk about all the merits, and I do believe that my vote went up to number 5. 7, that was my initial placement. I bumped it up 2 places above my favorite of the year, which is Promising Young Woman, because I was like, okay, I recognize this film's merit. 5 sounds pretty reasonable, but I just don't connect to this film in any particular way. And
Tucker is a famous disconnector. He's like, you can never know what's going to connect with him. And well, I guess Nomadland just rolled the wrong number on the dice.
Tucker says, "Objective artistic value be damned. It's all about me."
So
Sure.
I'm somewhere in the middle there because my number 3rd placement is completely due to the strength of the artistic voice and the uniqueness of the subject material and how honestly it's depicted. On the whole, more I think about it, I do find the film a little pretentious, but for me, also, I only really like prior to this 2 of the nominees, so it wasn't very difficult to put this in the top half for me. But I think that the ability of the narrative films we have above it, being Sound of Metal and Judas and the Black Messiah, to tell the stories they do with the impact they have and the amount of love, and something like Judas depicting an equally underrepresented, important American historical element through its own lens, through its style. I think that for me is a bigger achievement than Nomadland, where from my perspective, I feel like it's the framing of the fictional elements that hold back the story to an extent.
Yeah.
I think 3 is, for me, a pretty solid middle ground between the various tensions we've been discussing, and I wouldn't put it any higher. I don't think it should go any lower, partially because I just really don't like the father. I don't want to have that victory, but I think 3 is a good spot for the film.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'll just have to settle and be sad about it. That's okay. I can't put it any higher. I mean, it's my favorite of the 8 that we've seen. I think it's a seriously good movie, and I think it does some really interesting stuff with this blending the lines that we've been talking about the whole time. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, as I'll say right now. So.
Did you come up with that? It's great.
Yeah, it's almost like that's a phrase that exists already.
That's the way
Nomadland.
The wall drug crumbles.
The wall drug cookie crumbles.
God, I wish wall drug would crumble. We wouldn't have to talk about it.
Oh! What about the big wall drug dinosaur? You guys didn't think that was cool?
I thought the dinosaur was cool
too.
too.
There's such a big dinosaur there.
Because there were
80 feet tall.
big dinosaurs in South Dakota. That's why.
Yeah. Have you guys ever seen something bigger than 80 feet?
No.
Oh, I've been in New York. There's some big buildings there.
How tall? Or bigger than a big old dinosaur?
Bigger than 80 feet? It's a tough one. The Empire State Building? Yeah.
Timo, end the show.
Okay,
I
well,
don't need all drug slander. Okay.
Nomadland ends up at the number 3rd place, sandwiched in between Judas and The Father. So we will see. We'll be back next time after the ceremony. We got some prep Oscar stuff. We're really gonna nail down our picks for the other categories. But does that mean that our pick for the best picture is Sound of Metal as a collective, as a Quest governing body?
Certainly
is for me.
so.
It's
I-
my favorite.
I certainly think it is I think it is the best of the bunch.
There we go.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna say that even though I wish we were saying Nomadland, I'm also quite happy with saying Sound of Metal because that's a great movie. We really love that
Yeah.
one. We'll be back. Keep a lookout for more Oscars content. We're gonna be talking about all kinds of good stuff before and after the ceremony. And the next time you hear us talk about a movie, we will have spun that random wheel. It's coming back. It's been far too long. I really miss. Not only
It's been
do
a
I
long
miss the spin, that glorious rotating motion, but that glorious rotating phrase that goes around inside my head that our friend Tanner sings for us. So
Every time.
we'll be back with that once the ceremony's done. Enjoy watching the Oscars, everybody. I'm going to enjoy watching the Oscars. Who knows what they're going to be like this year? And, well, we'll catch you all on the flip side. Peace.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.